Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk to you about whether getting a Master's of Quantitative Finance or Master's in Management and Technology is best. So if you don't know me, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that helped me out to get through graduate school that I decided to pay the favor forward and help you out. Okay, so this was from one of the followers. He's been a longtime follower. He or she has been a longtime follower. Gantorockandroll says, I envision a career in academia, and I have the option of choosing two separate master's programs. One is a master's in management and technology, specializing in computer science and finance, and another is a master's of quantitative finance. If I attend to do a PhD in finance, which would provide me with the best outcome to enter a top tier PhD program. Do you do advise, and thank you for your work. All right, well, thank you actually for following along for so long. I know that you have been paying attention. There's been a few comments from a long time ago. And if you know the rules for this channel, if I do answer a question of yours, then you have to go out and do something nice for somebody else. That's the whole name of the game, is the reciprocity. And you have to do it in the next hour. And then you can leave comments below and let us know what you all did. All right, so again, to rock and roll. So first of all, I'm going to point out and tell you that you're doing the right thing at this moment. You're making very, very good choices for setting yourself up for a very good career. But not only that, but it is looking at a career that actually has some sort of commercial value in the marketplace. And I think that's really important to think about that, especially early on in your stage. Because if you have something that has value and that can produce value in the marketplace, it doesn't matter if you're going to do that later on. It matters that it's an option, that you have a fallback. And it gives you those options to fall back onto in case. So, for example, you go into finance, you get a regular job in finance, and you decide you don't like it. Well, then you can go and do something else, like I'm not sure, whatever it is, basket weaving, and explore whether you like that. And if you don't like that, then you know that you can go back and get the finance, or you can go back into the finance career pretty easily because you have that degree, or you're getting that particular degree. So it's important to think about that, right? The options that it gives you a lot more options. It gives you a fallback, right? It's kind of like insurance for the rest of your life. So that's really good. I wanted to point that out. First of all, you're well on your way, and you're actually looking at something that's actually going to produce value in the marketplace. Now, in terms of going forward, in terms of doing a PhD in finance, awesome, by the way. That's a really good career choice to go into that. They make very good money. Normally, in terms of PhDs in a business school, you're probably looking at anywhere between 20% to even 100% premium on getting a PhD in finance. PhD in finance and accounting, those two they tend to bring in the highest salaries in the business schools. However, it's not for everybody, right? So that's probably the reason why, is that it is a really tough degree, and it is pretty competitive to get into. And it's lucrative to go into other different sort of venues and go into industry and stuff like that. So it's just really hard, right? If you think of supply and demand, it's hard to find people that have that kind of degree. So then the salaries are higher. Then at the end of the day, that's really what it is. There's not as many people that can do that possible thing. But in terms of advice going forward, I would get you to think about making career life choices in one of two ways. One way is, this is where you want to go in 20 years, right? So you choose and you sort of think about, I'm going to be here in 20 years or here in 30 years, and this is what my whole life is going to be. Then I'm going to work back from there, and I'm going to figure out all the different stuff that I'm going to do to get there, right? So for example, if you want to go into Wall Street and be an investment banker and stuff, getting a PhD in finance is probably good, because then you can go, into that direction, and then you can do that's what they do, right? Like that's the kind of thing that they're going to do on Wall Street is do a lot of trading stuff, understand how particularly the quantitative finance is really good at this moment because things are moving towards machines, machines being broadly, right? So algorithms and computer science and things like that. And so things are definitely moving that way, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. In terms of the trading industry, if you haven't read it, you should read Flash Boys by Michael Lewis. You'll be blown away in terms of, it's just a really great read. And it's all about how Wall Street is changing over time. But what I would get you to think about is sort of the options as well of what you're going to go. So this is a second thing to think about. So one way is I'm going to do a PhD in finance, and I'm going to be a professor in finance in 30 years. And, I might do some consulting on the side or something like that in 30 years. That's what your target is. Well, then, a PhD in quantitative finance, a master's in quantitative finance, kind of makes sense to get there because that's what you're going to be doing. And I could see the Wall Street, the very, investment banking and things like that are going to be going in that direction a lot more, right? So I don't see that dying out. And that would probably be a good career direction if you want to do that. The second thing is to think about sort of options and the option value of the stuff that you're going to do, right? So having options in jobs is actually a good thing. So you can think instead of in 20 years, this is what I'm going to be, rather you'd want to think about, okay, I don't really know what I want to do at this moment. I kind of have an inkling of where I want to go, but I want to set myself up that has the most amount of options available so that, if something comes up, I can switch into that particular degree, right? So the PhD in management and technology with a computer science background is going to give you a lot more options in terms of where you're going to go, right? Because then you can go into not only in terms of the Wall Street, for example, you can go into corporate America and do computer programming for corporate America, right? So the Exxons and I don't know, I'm not sure at this moment, Time Warner or something like that. You do programming for them or you run one of the divisions for them, right? You can also go into Wall Street, right? That's going to set you up to go into Wall Street because people are looking for those kind of skills on Wall Street. And also the high technology industry. So it gives you a lot more options that way. The one thing is you have to think about the sort of trade-off in terms of the education you're going to get. So if you do something really focused, like the quantitative finance, in fact, there's a paper that came out a few years ago in Administrative Science Quarterly that was sort of showing this. If you do something focused, then you can get a job a lot more easier because you have analytical skills, right? You can go into that one particular area. But then it sort of, it makes it harder for you to trade your skills in the marketplace, right? So, and as you develop and grow further in the marketplace, then it's harder to sort of switch into different areas and things like that because you're very focused on those analytical skills. So the quantitative finance is probably going to give you an edge in terms of understanding the quantitative skills, but then you might not know, or you might be sort of stuck in the quantitative area, which is something to think about. But with the management and master's management technology, it's going to be harder at the beginning to get a job because there's, it's not as focused, right? And people are not going to the school to look for somebody that has a master's management in technology. They're looking for somebody that has a master's of quantitative finance. It's just what they're looking for, analytical skills, boots on the ground kind of stuff that they can get this stuff done. But, in 30 years, you're probably going to be understanding. So some of the stuff you learned in that degree are going to allow you to understand the bigger picture a little bit more. And that's kind of like strategy, for example. It allows you to understand the bigger picture a little bit more broadly. And so you might be more suited at that moment to go into, a corporate position. Now, my recommendation in terms of what you want to do going forward, what I would do is look at those 2 degrees and or pick a subgroup of people where you kind of want to sort of go into, whether it's Wall Street, for example, or maybe you want to become a professor in a business school. You look to see what kind of degrees that they have and you actually ask them, call them up and interview them. You can find people on LinkedIn and actually try to interview them. It might take a little bit of time, right? You might have to call 15 people or contact 15 people before somebody is willing to talk to you. But if you look for people that are your current alumni, it's gonna be a lot easier, right? So at the school that you're at, you wanna look for their alumni. It's gonna be a lot easier to find those individuals because they're just gonna be more willing to talk to you about career choices and things like that. And just interview them and see how they feel in terms of where they ended up and what kind of a good feeling they have. And what you're trying to do is, because right now you kind of have this imaginary view in your mind of what it's going to be like to have that degree and what you're going to be doing, and it's not clear in your mind, right? It's you can't be. So you want to investigate and sort of figure out where people are and what they're doing and get their opinion on that. As much as you possibly can. Get as much life experience from other people. It's called vicarious learning, and get as much experience from them as much as you possibly can to understand where you should possibly go. So this is a good start to ask here, but I also want you to go and find people on LinkedIn, maybe find 2 or 3 people right now in the next day or two, and contact them that have those 2 degrees and see where they are. Or go and look at professor, maybe you want to become a professor. Well, look at their CVs, their resumes online, and see what they did and see what kind of degree that they have. It's pretty easy to do that kind of stuff, and it's going to give you a lot of information. But in terms of making the actual choice, what I would do, take a bit of a break. Spend a little bit of time, go out to a cabin or a cottage or, some sort of a retreat, and just kind of hang out by yourself and think a little bit and think about what you want to do for the rest of your life. Because it does matter. And then you want to really listen to your heart and what it is telling you in terms of what you want to do, because there's nothing that sort of stinks more than being stuck doing quantitative finance, equations and stuff, or doing a management and technology sort of loosey-goosey kind of stuff that you don't really like, right? So you have to think about that kind of stuff, because it's going to help you sort of set your career going forward in terms of what you want to do. And you just really listen to your heart at this moment, but you're doing all the right things. But right now it's just kind of like, little adjustments at this moment. And that's really what I'm looking at this. It's really just little tiny adjustments. You're doing everything perfectly well. And they're both great degrees. You're going to do extremely well with this. So yeah, you're well on your way. And thanks again for asking this question. Now I just need you to go and do something nice for somebody else. All right. So, and that's rules, right? So, all right. Take care. Have a wonderful day. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel.